Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today we are going to talk about Torghast strategies, because it is something that can be pretty challenging early in the patch, particularly while you're under-geared. So I'm going to go through some anima powers, some different anima powers. If you ever want to look, there's the full list is available on Wowhead. I'll have a link to it in the description below, and you can just look through all of them. Some of the ones that have been data mined are either for future Torghast events or aren't actually implemented, but a lot of these are here, and you can get a kind of a good idea of which ones maybe have cool combos, because there's definitely some combos you can set up with your anima powers. But first I want to talk a little bit about general philosophy within Torghast. If your run is going to be close, if you're not sure whether you can complete the run or not, it is generally always possible to pull the floor more slowly, more carefully, fight things one at a time. Some of the elite enemies are hard, but usually if you're struggling with elite enemies, that's a single target moment. You can kill the rest of the trash around them without pulling them, or CC some of the stuff and then pull them. So that part is a single target part. And usually if you're struggling, it's going to be the boss that you're struggling the most with. So almost always in Torghast, I would prioritize things that help you with the boss if you are having a hard time, rather than things that increase your speed or increase your AoE. However, if you're comfortable, if you're clearing comfortably, and you're instead just trying to get in and out as fast as possible, then all of a sudden those speed and AoE factors become more important. Whereas the single target, if you feel like you got enough of that already, if you feel like you're over-geared or just super sick, or you got a single target anima power that you think is going to single-handedly carry your boss DPS, then you can start picking up some more AoE. But generally, I'll pick even a mediocre single target damage boost over a great AoE boost or a great speed increase if I'm on a character that's feeling like it's going to have a tough time. Sustain is also something that you need to solve on a lot of specs. One way that you can do this is spec healer or tank, if that's a legal option for your class. Or if if you're playing a warlock, you don't have to worry about it as much. If you're playing hunter, you've got a pet. But if you're playing like a rogue, you're sometimes feeling a little bit left out, and you're like, all right, I got to figure out a way to live. So in that case, if there's any anima powers that you get offered that will help you tremendously with sustained healing, that's valuable. However, generally defensive is not a good way to build in Torghast, because the boss has a ramping buff that's going to make him hit harder. So offense is a good defense in Torghast, because the faster you kill the fight, the less total damage, like the less damage per second you're going to be taking, right? So if you can find something that makes you heal a lot, it can be good, but don't take modest defensive increases over modest offensive increases, because the modest offensive increases will often cause you to need less healing because the fight's going to end quicker. So let's go through some examples of stuff that I would value highly that people may not consider very highly. One example is like this Mask of Withering here. Door of Shadows weakens all enemies you pass through, increasing their damage taken by 20% for 30 seconds. A lot of people look at this and are like, okay, I'm never using Door of Shadows. That's not a button I press very often, because a lot of people don't bother pressing it too often. But this thing is basically just a 20% DPS increase on the last boss. Pretty good. Similarly, let's see, we have the Phantasmal Iris for Demon Hunter. Looting Phantasma increases the damage of your next either Eye Beam or Fell Devastation by 1%. If you're comfortable clearing without using Fell Devastation or Eye Beam for the rest of the run until you get to the boss, this can give you a big burst of damage on that boss. So that can be really helpful. If not, it can still be good. But I wouldn't recommend this generally if you're planning to use it just... I mean, it can be a fine option for clearing halls, and it can help you kill the elites as well. But I think it's phenomenal if you're using something like this to actually then burst down the boss at the end to get a little bit extra value on the boss. So if there's something like this that increases the damage of your next something, and you can safely hold off on ever pressing that button until you get to the boss, that's a pretty good option. These Lithium powers are interesting. In a group setting, these can be really strong because you often don't need the healing done, but many of them will reduce your healing done. And so even if you're somebody that didn't use arcane damage, reducing your healing done by 75% can be pretty deadly, and is often a 4 times less defensiveness, basically, that your spec's going to have. So that may not justify the 30% mastery increase. However, if you're feeling confident, if you've got a good build already, if you're blasting, if you absorb instead of healing, for instance, this can be a really good option too. Mostly, though, I would say these effects are best in a group setting rather than when playing solo. There is one exception, which is the Lithium Weight. This is a really good one, as long as you're not going to need to jump. There are some Torghast wings where jumping is valuable. so I would watch out for those. If you're if you want to see an example of this, Towley, popular WoW streamer, has a clip that I assume is going to be his top one of the month or something, where he picks this thing up and then immediately jumps out into, or walks out into a lake of lava and can't get out because he can't jump. So avoid getting in that situation if you can avoid it. That's definitely a lesson that we all can learn from, because definitely otherwise would happen to me for sure. 30% primary stat though, and stamina is not to be sniffed at, so very valuable if you can avoid that drawback costing you. Let's talk a little bit. Let's see. Disembowelers Hook. Damaging an enemy whose health is below 10% will disembowel them, instantly killing them. This is something you have to watch out for because it does have the drawback of causing splashback damage when you kill stuff, but this is effectively like an 11% DPS increase on the boss, because when the boss gets to 10% health, they die, right? So this will deal 10% of the boss's health and damage, which is really strong. So I would recommend this as a single target boss effect, even if it means you're going to want to pull, if you're in a run where you're having a hard time, even if this means you're going to pull a little bit more slowly, it will help you kill the elites as well. You just may have to watch out a little bit in AoE to avoid the splashback killing you. The Frostbite one is an interesting one. This one's good if you're overgearing the content. This deals 50% of the target's hit points, but then after 4 seconds, they will slowly start regenerating it. So if you would kill something in, say, 8 seconds, then the Frostbite wand is just going to let you kill it in 4, and that's great. But if you would kill something in 30 seconds, the Frostbite wand is going to have no effect, right? They're going to be healed all the way up by the time you get, like, you might get them down to like 30%, and then they keep healing, and by the time they're done healing, they're at like 60%, and then you're killing them the rest of the way, and it's like it didn't do anything. There are some neat tricks you can do to play around with this, though. Particularly, if you get offered this near the end of the run, you can just leave it in your pending Anima powers window, and then select it when the boss is at 50% health, and bang, boss dead, because you've gained this Anima power mid-fight, and you deal 50% of their total hit points when they're already at 50%, and then this was effectively doubling your DPS. So that can absolutely be worth maneuvering for. And in general, holding Anima powers a little bit for bosses can be useful if there is some kind of time-based constraint to them. Lens of Elchaver. This is one of my favorite Anima powers for a lot of specs. It doesn't have interactions with every spec, but when you read it initially, it looks like it's very conditional, right? When you critically strike with a direct attack, an Arcane Bolt will also strike your target, dealing 92% of spell power arcane damage, but this triggers off of so much stuff. I'm not sure. Direct attack, there's just so many things that are multiple instances of direct damage that will trigger this lens. I think it was triggering off of like Rushing Jade Wind ticks, Whirlwind, multiple ticks off of that. There are a lot of effects that cause multiple instances of damage for one global. And as long as it's direct damage and not damage over time, this will have multiple chances to trigger off of those. Damage over time effects do not get counted in this. So something like Corruption, unless there's an initial upfront damage tick, will have 0 interaction with the lens. But if there's an initial upfront damage tick, there will still be 1 chance here, and the proc is not to be sniffed at. So I would almost never pass up a Lens of Elchaver unless there was something else really good on that spot, or my spec really didn't use this thing. One combo with this is the Brittle Bone Dust, increasing the chance for you and all friendly and enemy people within 30 yards to be crit by 25%. This is really potent because it'll make this proc all the time, but it is a defensive loss, so you got to watch out for that. It's something to be careful of. You do not want to be using this if you're in danger of then being one-shot by all sorts of random crits. But huge DPS increase in that combo. And even without that combo, this can be the kind of thing, if you're feeling really comfortable with your run, these sorts of Anima powers can be things that will speed them up and make them a little bit more dangerous, but you don't care that they're more dangerous, right? Similarly, just movement speed stuff, like increasing the range of your Infernal Strike as a Vengeance Demon Hunter, or giving you a bunch more uses, or just giving you more movement speed of stuff. All that can be really good, but I would pass those up for even like 5% or 3% crit if I was having a hard run, right? If I'm having a hard run, then I'm all focused on something that'll help me with the end boss. Crumbling Aegis, this one is another one that's really potent to get on the boss, right? If you just have this one during the boss fight, it's largely a freebie, 1.5 minutes where you don't have to spend any globals on defense, you don't have to do anything at all, you just do full damage. Very, 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 very good. I don't know if this only gets offered to Paladins. I got offered it on my Paladin, but it was it was nice. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a pretty easy time with this boss already, and then I got offered the crumbling aegis, and the boss was dead, and I took literally 0 damage. So awesome effects there. And even if you're not that high damage, if this means that you're not taking, like, if this will give you so many extra damage globals that you don't have to heal yourself or run away from their mechanics or stun them for a global. So obviously this thing's powerful on the boss. However, I wouldn't use this if I just got offered it in the middle of a floor if I thought the run was going to be close. I would save my Phantasma for buying something that'll help me with the boss, or I would buy something right then that helped me with the boss. I would use this if I felt like I was going to die to an elite or something, but generally, if the run's going to be close and you get offered something really cool and awesome, but it's not going to help you with the end boss, I'd usually pass up on that, as long as that run was going to be close, right? If the run's going to be close, all I'm focused on is what is going to kill the boss. Next one here, Bloating Fodder. This one you get offered all the time, causing Marats to explode on death. This can be a nice AoE quality of life increase. Not any use on the boss until we get further into progression. There's some stuff you can buy, I think, from Venari, and I think there's some legendary interaction. So you can go for a Marat meme build that may be functional on bosses. I don't expect it'll ever be the best thing you can be doing, but it may be functional, and this is offered frequently enough that maybe you can actually turn it into something really consistent. But generally, I would say avoid this one unless it's your only option, because it isn't going to help with the boss. Then here we have the Secret Spices. This is also a Marat-themed one, but this one says killing a Marat increases your maximum health by 2%. So this can give you up to doubling your health. If you get this early and you're having a hard run, you seek out every Marat on every floor you do, and particularly if your spec has percent healing interactions, then this all of a sudden is a huge increase not just to your effective health, but to your sustain, right? To the amount of health, HPS that you're able to do to yourself. So that can be extremely, extremely useful if you're going to have a hard boss fight, because there is the Enrage, but the Enrage isn't the end of the world, especially since they nerfed it so you can still interrupt things when they're have more than 10 stacks of the soft Enrage. There's a lot of bosses that are definitely doable even deep into the Enrage, and something that can increase your effective health and your sustain throughput by as much as this one potentially can, absolutely worth looking at. So don't be fooled by the whole Marat word. On this one is just a good boss power if you can find it early enough, and if you're in a tile set that has Marats, and a lot of them ideally. One other thing I want to talk about is something that you may not be aware of, which is that let's see, where's this thing? The Broker's Purse. This is an Anima power that you can get. So you know how the Broker halfway up sells the Anima cell for 250 Phantasma that you can throw and turn somebody into an Anima cell? You can throw that back on the Broker and you'll get this Anima power every time. So you can effectively invest 250 Phantasma at the vendor halfway up to turn it into 400 Phantasma. You can also just use it as a random Anima cell on a random enemy, or on an enemy that you're having trouble with, and that's definitely a valid use too. But I find myself pretty often taking the option to invest it in turning it into 400 Phantasma that I'll then spend on the last vendor. You do want to avoid having too much Phantasma at the end vendor, and so if you're having a hard run, what I'd recommend is instead full clear every floor, get as much Phantasma as you can. You probably won't need this extra investment and this extra Phantasma for the end. But if you're going kind of pretty quick, this can be a good way to power up yourself. There's nothing good to buy from the vendor. You'll just get some more Phantasma, and you're not full clearing every floor. You're not just going to have infinite Phantasma by the end of the run, and so this will help you maybe buy another good power or two from the last vendor. Generally, when I'm looking at Phantasma, I want to make sure that I always have at least a couple hundred, maybe a 200. At least I have 200 going into each vendor so that I can make sure I buy anything really sweet that's available. And ideally, I'd like to buy those random cells that they offer as well, the random plundered Anima cells. At least, that's a nice little investment of 150 Phantasma. But there's pretty quick diminishing returns here on the Phantasma you bring. That 500th Phantasma that you bring to a vendor is a lot less likely to be spent on something good than that 100th point of Phantasma. So I wouldn't worry too much about hoarding Phantasma, because there's not... once you've spent it on the first couple good things from the vendor, you're often buying very minuscule upgrades or things that don't really help with the boss. And again, if the Torghast run is close, all you care about is optimizing for that boss fight. That is what matters, and focus on that the entire run through. That will really help. I see a lot of people struggling with Torghast because they're having a medium hard time clearing the trash, and so they make their build good against the trash, and then they hit the boss and brick wall. So you can almost always handle the trash by just playing more slowly, playing more carefully. The boss is the hard part. The boss is what you want to prepare for. You can see what the boss is going to be at that midway point vendor. It'll be on a little floating disc next to the vendor now. That's another new hotfix they added in. So I personally don't really know how to make good use of that yet because I don't have all the boss abilities committed to memory. But as you start being able to do that, as you start identifying what the different bosses will require, you can start to decide whether you are really going to want to pick up something that makes you like immune to interrupts and silences if the last boss has an interrupt and silence and you know that's coming. So try and start looking out for that. That's something I'm starting to look out for and trying to make sure that I'm thinking about it to improve my future runs. But yeah, those are just some of my thoughts about Torghast, some of my thoughts about some of these different anima powers. If you're interested, if you like this video, if you want to talk more about anima powers, if you think that's interesting, I'd be happy to make videos about certain specs, about the anima powers that they get offered. Generally, there's a lot of good ones, but there's also usually like one or two builds that are pretty heavily supported as the obvious ones to go for. So I think it's usually fairly easy to figure that out, but not always. And sometimes there are those little interactions or things that may be more or less valuable than they look from just reading their tooltip. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if that's the kind of thing you'd be interested in. And check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Dratnos. Like and subscribe. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.